When it comes to epic storytelling, the bar was always real low for arcade games. About the most you could expect was a wall of text at the beginning, or a character bio during the attract mode, or maybe, if you're lucky, a brief cinema setting up each stage. If you wanted a deep and involving story, then you were just better off playing Final Fantasy, or Phantasy Star, or really any of the other role-playing games on home consoles. Because apparently the arcade was where you went for simple shoot-'em-ups and one-on-one fighters. But don't tell that to Konami, who bucked the trend by creating Gaiapolis, one of the most epic arcade games of all time. Released in 1993, this little plate adventure was not only a great action RPG set in a fantasy world, but it was also the precursor to Capcom's Dungeons & Dragons brawlers. Turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the story and ending for both the arcade and Nintendo Entertainment System versions of Gaiapolis. This is Game Over, the early years. You know that things are cataclysmic when a prince, a dragon, and a fairy team up to save the world. No, that's not the start of a cheesy joke, but rather the reality of the three heroes in Gaiapolis, which includes Prince Gerard of Avalon, an exiled dragon named Galahad, and Elaine Shee, the last survivor of her clan. The unlikely trio comes together when the Kingdom of Avalon is attacked by a mysterious and incredibly powerful force that is unlike anything they've ever seen before. Now let me tell you, that's just the start of the weirdness, because a flaming knight known as the Fire Warrior teleports to the wooden boat the gang is using to escape. He reveals that Avalon was wiped out by King Darkness, the ruler of the Zahark Empire. What, you've never heard of him? Well, neither did our heroes, and that's because the Zahark Empire is located in the sky, and the only way to enter is by collecting the 3 keys to open up the Heavenly Gate. The Fire Warrior tells the trio that they need to go to Neo Mosque and then disappears before engulfing the entire boat in flames. Whew! It's in Neo Mosque where we meet an old man who is both thankful and a little bit surprised to see our heroes. While he's happy to be free from the captivity of the monsters, he's genuinely shocked that the Fire Warrior's prophecy was actually coming true. The old man reveals that his clairvoyant daughter was kidnapped and taken to Turin in order to make it harder for anybody to find the first key. Harder? Sure, but definitely not impossible. In fact, all we need to do is defeat this Serpent Knight to save the kidnapped girl, who we learn is named Olympia. She teases our reluctant, world-saving heroes about their future, but won't tell them exactly what's gonna happen. Instead, Olympia points them towards an arena battle where they'll be able to earn the first key. The Fire Warrior is pleased that we're able to beat back the tanks and robots in order to collect the first key, but he warns us that the job is not done yet. He reveals that the second key is being held in a city far away, so it's time to travel to the northeast and deep into the heart of the Dark Corridor. It's here where we find a 4-armed guardian who would rather die than let the trio through. And as it turns out, defeating the Guardian not only allows our hero to enter the Dark Corridor, but it also frees the Blancmute townspeople from the monster's oppressive grip. The people are so excited that they're free that they give the prince a piece of the sword crystal, which works as a key to unlock the ancient weapons that'll make the fight against King Darkness that much easier. Now, it's on the path to the Dark Corridor that the Fellowship worries that the caves might be too cold to safely traverse. However, the only thing they really need to be worried about is the army of lizard fighters who will stop at nothing to defeat our heroes. This leads to an elevator ride down to yet another arena battle, which is where we'll fight to get the second key. Along the way, they'll meet up with a winged fighter named Flap who confuses the trio as soldiers of the Imperial Army. He warns us that the arena that holds the second key has fallen into enemy hands and the battle will be much, much harder than before. But don't worry, Flappy, we got this. With the second key in the good guy's hands, the threesome is visited once again by the Fire Warrior. Although the mission has been relatively easy so far, he warns our heroes that the next part is going to be the toughest fight yet. They're gonna go on what could possibly be the most dangerous trip you could possibly go on, which means that they're gonna need to make some new friends. He suggests heading to Atlantica in order to team up with a race of fighters they have yet to encounter. It's the bit where he says, "You may find life in death," that has the group concerned. Now, the gang makes their way towards Atlantica, but quickly discovers that nobody wants to help them on this journey. Even when they literally have a soldier at the end of a sword, he refuses to have anything to do with Atlantica. He would rather die than go there. Oh man, what has the Fire Warrior gotten us into? And what they find in Atlantica is a graveyard with a nice view of the remnants of an ancient society that ultimately gave in to war and greed. If the visual wasn't enough of a reminder, there's a robot there that is more than happy to tell the tale of humanity's downfall. It's a reminder of what people are capable of and what could be in our future if the trio fails. Yeah, it's precisely the wake-up call our heroes needed before heading to Los for our third and final key. As it turns out, Los is one of those cities that's been destroyed and completely overrun with monsters. It's a labyrinth of broken walls and destroyed pillars, all of which lead us to a gate that takes us to the third arena where we'll hopefully win the final key. Unfortunately, the guards tell us that we're too late. King Darkness already has a plan to deal with overpopulation by turning the humans to ash. You know, kinda like Thanos. The goal is to destroy every living thing and start fresh, with King Darkness handcrafting his own civilization that will rule for eternity. Damn, that's cold! The good news is that we're eventually led into the third arena, where the trio successfully wins the final key. The even better news is that Flap unexpectedly shows up and reveals that he's part of the prophecy. He's gonna take the heroes to Coben, which is where they'll use the key to break the seal, thus freeing him of the underground world. And if that wasn't enough, the Fire Warrior shows up and reveals his real form, which is the mythical Golden Hawk. He's gonna guide our three warriors and their winged friends to heaven, where we'll finally be able to defeat King Darkness. Yeah, we're in the end game now. So, do you want to know what the single best thing about opening up the gates to heaven is? It's getting to fly on these hoverboards, of course. Well, that and finally being able to see Gaiapolis, a massive structure that seemingly floats in the sky. The gang worries that it's too high and only God will be able to reach it. But the Golden Hawk reminds them that the whole thing was created by humans, so of course there's a transporter that'll take them right to where they want to go. Humans are lazy like that. This leads to one of the coolest looking stages in the entire game. Our heroes are fighting bad guys high above the earth, slowly making their way to King Darkness. We eventually find him in the throne room, which leads us to an epic good versus evil fight, where the good guys seem to have the upper hand. But not so fast, because before we can get that final blow in, the king uses his colorful sword to open up a portal in the floor. And what comes out of that portal? Well, it's a massive dragon, of course. This is what King Darkness hopes to use to turn everything to ash. And it's up to the trio to stop both of them from succeeding. This turns into the fight to end all fights, with both sides bringing everything they've got to the table. After an epic battle, we finally slay the dragon, and this is what happens next. Despite being one of Konami's deepest arcade games, they never gave Gaiapolis a proper home console port. Now, it's worth mentioning that there is an unlicensed game using the exact same name that's on the Nintendo Entertainment System from publisher Satchem. Sites like Wikipedia and WikiWand both say that it's a port, but considering that it came out 3 years before the arcade game, I'm not so sure that's the case. The truth is, I don't know much about this game, including what the story is. For what it's worth, there are a few similarities. Both games feature a trio of heroes that are confronted by a mysterious figure on a boat. They also fight very similar bosses, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. I mean, they read books instead of collecting keys, they play through entirely different stages, and they have unique abilities that you didn't see in the similarly titled arcade game. Look, seeing as I'm already dubious that this game is even related, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time covering it. But just for the sake of being thorough, here's how the home console version of Gaiapolis ends. Boy, talk about a sequel ending. While it didn't exactly leave us on a cliffhanger, this Gaiapolis cinema definitely set the table for a bunch of sequels. I mean, the Golden Hawk literally instructs the prince to travel across the world defeating evil. If they wanted to, Konami could have easily milked that for at least 3 sequels without even breaking a sweat. But alas, those sequels never materialized. I suppose part of the problem is that the game never found wide distribution outside of Japan. It also didn't help that Konami chose not to port the game to any home consoles despite it being a great fit on the Super NES. The only thing standing in the way seemed to be the tall screen aspect ratio, which would have needed to be adjusted for the home consoles. I guess that Konami decided that it wasn't worth the effort, what with the 16-bit era coming to an end and beat-em-ups already out of style. That's a shame, because this is a solid adventure that would have benefited from a couple of sequels. It's a game that almost feels misplaced in the arcades, almost as if it should have been a console adventure from the get-go. I mean, the quest is so long that it literally has a password system. How many arcade games can you name that make you memorize a password? Yeah, not many, and that's just one of the reasons why Gaiapolis remains one of Konami's most criminally underappreciated oddity. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post a new episode almost every week. We have a whole playlist with over 150 episodes of it. You should check it out. Now, here's the question I have for you. What arcade game has the best story? I mean, it doesn't have to be the deepest or most complicated story, just one that you really like. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with reviews of both G Darius and Crisis Wing, as well as speculation about a new Taito game. We have a packed week in store for you, so do me a favor and click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,